The South Korean airliner that crashed last December, killing 179 people on board, has been attributed to pilot error. Investigators have said pilots appeared to have switched off the wrong engine during the emergency, which occurred after a bird strike.
Video shows the moment the Jeju Airlines passenger jet touched down in Muon, South Korea, the belly of the jet skidding on the tarmac before it slams into a concrete wall, exploding into a fireball.
Today we are diving into two terrifying flight disasters that nearly ended in total chaos. A Jeju airplane crashed into a concrete wall, killing almost everyone on board, and just when things couldn't get worse, a US military bomber nearly smashed into a passenger plane mid-air. How did these disasters happen? Who's really to blame? And could you be the next victim of these aviation failures? Stay with me, because what we are about to uncover will make you question if flying is as safe as you think. On December 9, 2024, Jeju Air Flight 7J382 was flying from Bangkok to Muon International Airport in South Korea. The plane was a Boeing 737-800, and there were 181 people on board. As the plane got close to landing, the weather became really bad. It was raining heavily, the sky was covered with clouds, and strong winds were blowing across the runway. The pilots were struggling to land safely because they couldn't see clearly, and the winds were pushing the plane off balance. But just moments before the plane was about to touch down, a bird strike happened. A flock of birds flew into the plane's path, and some got sucked into the right engine. This caused serious damage to that engine. In the cockpit, alarms started going off and warning lights flashed. The pilots, who were under extreme pressure and stress, thought the left engine was the one that got damaged, so they shut down the left engine, which was still working fine. This mistake left the plane flying with the only damaged right engine, which didn't have enough power to land safely. The plane touched down too far along the runway, and because the surface was wet and slippery, it couldn't slow down properly. With only one damaged engine running, the brakes and spoilers were not enough to stop the aircraft. It skidded past the end of the runway, crashed into a huge concrete barrier, and exploded into flames. Out of the 181 passengers and crew members, only 2 people survived. Bird strikes happen often in aviation. Birds flying into planes is not something new, and most of the time pilots can handle it. Planes are built to keep flying even if one engine fails, so it makes you wonder, how did this bird strike lead to a complete disaster? The problem wasn't just the bird strike, it was how the pilots reacted to it. The Boeing 737-800 has many screens and indicators that show how the engines are performing. But in a real emergency, when things are happening fast, these screens can give too much information, and not all of it is clear. After the bird strike, both engines started showing strange numbers and warning signals, but only the right engine was badly damaged. The left engine was still working fine. The pilots had seconds to decide what to do. With all the alarms and flashing lights going off, they believed the left engine was the problem and shut it down. In reality, they had just switched off the engine that was still helping the plane. Now, the plane was flying with only the right engine, which had been damaged by the bird strike. This caused the plane to lose power when it needed it the most. One of the biggest reasons this crash became so deadly was because of a concrete wall. Yes, you heard that right. A giant concrete barrier was sitting at the end of the runway at Muon International Airport. Now, this is not how it's supposed to be. According to global aviation safety rules, airports must have something called a runway safety area, or EMAS bed at the end of runways. These are soft zones designed to safely stop an aircraft if it goes past the runway. But Muon Airport didn't have any of these safety zones. Instead, there was a solid concrete wall. This wall is what turned a bad situation into a deadly disaster. If there had been a proper safety area, the plane might have rolled to a stop with some damage, and passengers could have survived. But slamming into a concrete barrier at high speed meant the aircraft was completely destroyed, and the fire that followed killed almost everyone on board. The big question is, who thought it was a good idea to put a wall there? Was it airport management, local authorities, or was it a case of budget cuts? This is why the families of the victims are furious. They're demanding a full criminal investigation to find out who allowed this dangerous structure to exist. Ignoring global safety standards is not just carelessness, it's criminal negligence. A plane crash is never the result of just one mistake. It's always a chain of problems. In the Jeju air crash, the pilots made a big mistake by shutting down the wrong engine, but we also have to ask, why did air traffic control allow the plane to land in such horrible weather? One international airport didn't have a full instrument landing system for both ends of its runway. An ILS helps guide pilots when they can't see properly, like in fog, rain, or at night. On the night of the crash, the weather was terrible, heavy rain, strong winds, and almost zero visibility. Pilots could barely see the runway. In situations like this, ATC has the authority to tell planes to divert to a safer airport. Anshin and Gimpo airports, which are much bigger and better equipped, were available. But for some reason, ATC still cleared Jeju Air Flight 7J382 to attempt a landing at Muon. Despite the pilots signaling they were having issues, no one stopped the landing attempt. This decision now has raised serious questions. Some experts believe that this happened because of a get-it-done attitude in the aviation industry. Delays, diversions, and cancellations cost airlines a lot of money, so there's often pressure to push flights through, even in risky situations. It's a dangerous culture where avoiding delays becomes more important than safety. Jeju Air is a budget airline, and while that doesn't always mean bad safety, it does raise concerns about how much money is spent on pilot training. Flying on a plane, especially during emergencies, is not just about following checklists. Pilots need real experience in handling high-pressure situations, but insiders have revealed that Jeju Air and many other low-cost airlines try to save money by reducing the quality of pilot training. Simulator training is a key part of a pilot's learning. But at Jeju Air, these simulator sessions are often limited to basic tests just to tick boxes and meet minimum legal requirements. They avoid complex real-life emergency scenarios like asymmetric thrust landings, where one engine fails and the other works, bird strikes, or wet runway overruns. This is dangerous because when a real emergency happens, pilots are left unprepared. They have to make life or death decisions in seconds, and if they've never practiced these situations before, mistakes are bound to happen. The Jeju Air Pilots Union has now written an open letter demanding urgent reforms. They're asking the airline to invest in better, more realistic simulator training that prepares pilots for all kinds of emergencies, not just easy, routine situations. They argue that relying on minimum legal standards is not enough. Just when everyone was still talking about the Jeju air crash, another scary incident happened in July 2025. A US military B-52 bomber almost crashed into a commercial airplane flying over the Pacific Ocean. The B-52 is a huge military aircraft used for long-distance missions. During a regular military exercise, this bomber accidentally entered civilian airspace. At the same time, a commercial airliner was flying in that area, unaware that a bomber was so close. The two planes passed each other with only 800 feet of vertical separation, which is extremely close at cruising altitude. To understand how close was this? At that speed and height, 800 feet is just a few seconds away from a mid-air collision. If either plane had been just a little off in altitude or path, it could have ended in disaster. So, how did this happen? The problem was simple but dangerous: miscommunication. The military did not properly share their flight path details with civilian air traffic control. As a result, ATC was not aware that a bomber would be in that airspace at that time. This exposed a massive flaw in how military and civilian flights are coordinated. In busy skies where hundreds of planes are flying, even a small mistake can lead to a massive tragedy. This wasn't a case of bad luck, it was a failure in communication and coordination. If quick action hadn't been taken, we could have witnessed a horrifying mid-air collision. Incidents like this show how critical it is for military operations and civilian aviation authorities to be in constant and clear communication, especially in shared airspace. The B-52 near miss was shocking, but it's not the first time something like this has happened. All around the world, there are ongoing problems with how military and civilian aviation share the skies. Military aircraft often have their own special flight zones, but not every country makes it mandatory for military flights to constantly update civilian air traffic controllers about their movements. This creates blind spots where civilian pilots and ATC have no idea where military planes are flying. The International Civil Aviation Organization, which sets global aviation rules, has already recommended that military and civilian flights should be tracked in joint systems. But the problem is, many countries are not following these recommendations seriously. Some regions have real-time coordination, but in others, the military treats their flight operations as secretive and doesn't share details until it's too late. Aviation experts are now worried if this lack of coordination continues, near misses like the B-52 incident will become more frequent and could eventually result in a major mid-air collision. The solution is simple in theory, but difficult in practice. Countries need to create mandatory protocols where military and civilian ATC systems are always in sync. Every aircraft, whether it's a passenger plane or a fighter jet, must be visible on a shared radar system to prevent deadly accidents. Both the Jeju air crash and the B-52 near miss have caused massive public outrage. In South Korea, people are furious. They are demanding the government to take serious action to improve airport safety. Families of the victims are pushing for big changes, like adding runway safety zones, improving bird hazard management, and making sure pilots get better emergency training. There's a lot of pressure on the government to fix these issues immediately. In the United States, people are angry about how the B-52 incident was handled. Aviation experts, media, and regular travelers are asking why the military is allowed to fly so close to commercial planes without proper coordination. The FAA and the US Air Force are now under intense scrutiny. They are being asked to create stricter rules that force military and civilian aviation authorities to communicate in real time, especially during exercises. But here's the problem. Making these changes is expensive. Adding safety zones to airports, upgrading air traffic systems, and improving training costs a lot of money. Airport authorities, airlines, and governments often delay these upgrades because they don't want to spend that much unless they are forced to. That's why public pressure is so important. Unless people keep raising their voices and demanding change, officials might just wait for the outrage to fade and avoid taking responsibility. Unfortunately, aviation history shows that safety reforms often happen only after big disasters. The hope is that these two incidents will be a turning point, but the challenge is making sure that the anger doesn't die down before real action is taken. The Jeju air crash report is expected to be released in June 2026. But many families of the victims are worried that by then, the investigation will be watered down by bureaucracy and politics. They fear that the report will blame the pilots and close the case without fixing the bigger problems like airport infrastructure and poor emergency protocols. The same worry exists with the B-52 near miss. Officials might call it a minor mistake, fix a few procedures on paper, and move on without solving the actual coordination issues. But these aren't random accidents. Both incidents are warning signs of deeper, systematic failures. Runway designs are outdated, wildlife hazard management is ignored, cockpit systems are confusing under pressure, and the coordination between civilian flights and military flights is weak. All these cracks in the system are getting bigger. The aviation industry now faces a serious choice. Either they take these warnings seriously and reform the system, or they wait for another tragedy to force their hand, and by then, it might be too late. Passengers trust that every time they step on a plane, the systems in place will keep them safe. That trust is broken when authorities choose cost saving over safety. The aviation world has been lucky so far, but luck isn't a safety plan. The real question is, will authorities act now and fix these cracks, or will we see another disaster headline soon? Do you believe airlines and governments will actually fix these safety problems, or will they wait for another disaster to happen? Let me know your thoughts in the comments and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this.